Chapter 1091. Before he arrives. Because of the dangerous terrain, even though the guilds could jump into battle at any moment, for now they could only huddle together. Everyone looked around at each other, secretly preparing their skills and targets. Once their leaders gave the order, they could instantly and accurately launch their attacks. Yu Wenzhou had also originally wanted to play it safe, but after hearing Huang Shaoxun and Lu Hanwen's conversation, he agreed with Lu Hanwen's judgment. Yi Shu and his team hadn't heard the news about Shadow Commander San's spawn, they'd only casually asked about Huang Shaoxun's location. But now with Huang Shaoxun's reply, they were exposed. Aside from a boss spawn, there was no reason for Huang Shaoxun to run to Barrier Mountains. Team Happy needs many things, Yu Wenzhou thought to himself. He was very clear about the roster of that grassroots team, and knew that they had two Nightwalker classes, especially Windward Formation, who had history with Blue Rain. Yu Wenzhou's current account Swaksar was originally that person's account, after all. But right now, Yu Wenzhou was using an alt anyway, and so he didn't let himself dwell on the past. The thought just crossed his mind briefly, and then he began to ponder how best to combat Yi Shu. Yi Shu was undoubtedly the number one enemy. In the current situation, this guy would certainly break the equilibrium, so wouldn't it be safer to sort everything out before he got here? Just as Yu Wenzhou was about to speak, he heard another voice cutting before him. I say, to make this easier, how about we negotiate a plan? The sound seemed to come from Thunderclap's area. Yu Wenzhou was fairly sure who the speaker was, so he smiled and casually said, "You're in a rush. Before that guy arrives. I'm sure everyone understands what I mean," said Xiao Shikan. Agreed. From Misty Rain came a woman's voice. Misty Rain's captain, Chu Yongshu. HMPH. From Wind Howl there was a disdainful cough. Tang Hao knew to whom these people were referring, and was unimpressed by their fear. What kind of plan? Someone asked from 301 degrees. It was their captain Yang Kong. 301's strength here was slightly weaker compared to the others. If this became a direct battle, they would certainly be disadvantaged, so they were particularly interested in reaching some sort of agreement through negotiation to solve this problem. Right now, the groups present were Blue Rain, Thunderclap, Misty Rain, Wind Howl, and 301 degrees, with each team's respective captains present. Tang Hao's scoff wasn't quite an agreement to negotiations, but it at least wasn't a clear refusal, so he was automatically included in the talks. Let's each send a representative to 1v1. Yu Wenzhou was the first to propose a solution. Opposed, Xiao Shikan immediately objected. 1v1, at first glance, seemed to be fair. But it depended on each side's members, and who they could send up. Blue Rain had Huang Shaoxun, an absolute titan at 1v1s, he had a high chance of winning. Thunderclap could put up a fight. ITT wasn't like they'd be instantly crushed by Huang Shaoxun, but their chances of winning would definitely be smaller. As for the other teams, they were probably in a similar situation. Yu Wenzhou's suggestion appeared to be fair, but it was definitely biased toward Blue Rain. Opposed, as expected, Misty Rain's Chu Yongshu also expressed her dissent, following the same train of thought as Xiao Shikan. You want a 1v1, then let's 1v1. On the other hand, Tang Hao was unafraid and boldly accepted the proposition. Yang Kong hesitated. When it came to 1v1, his chances of winning were similarly low. But compared to a battle between the full forces of all sides, a 1v1 definitely increased 301's chances of success. Huang Shaoxun, Tang Hao, and the others were much bigger players than he was. But in a 1v1, no one would dare say for sure that a win or loss was guaranteed. Well, we can't play a group battle, that'd waste too much time, Yu Wenzhou chuckled. Seeing 2 votes against him, he knew that his suggestion definitely wouldn't be accepted. Then to be fast, let's just roll for it, Xiao Shikan said. Relying on luck to decide? That's absurd. This should be decided by strength. Tang Hao immediately expressed his objection toward this plan. Ha ha ha, I remember hearing that Tang Hao was especially bad at rolling. I heard that he almost always gets less than 50, isn't that right? From Blue Brook Guild's side came another person's voice. The fact that Huang Shaoxun had managed to stay quiet until now was already quite a remarkable feat. Originally, this was a captain-level conversation, and the other players were careful to maintain silence as they watched. Once Huang Shaoxun spoke up, there were suddenly whispers everywhere. It was clear that this was a never-before-heard piece of gossip. What kind of skill is rolling? Tang Hao fumed. Haven't you heard that luck is also a part of strength? For example. What about this? Chu Yongshu ruthlessly interrupted Huang Shaoshan. By the time they waited for that guy to finish, Yi Shu probably would have already slaughtered his way here. Each of us can send out a few people and attack the boss in teams. Whichever team has the highest damage output can have the boss, Chu Yongshu said. That's not a bad plan. Yu Wenzhou was the first to agree. It's alright. That way, I think 5 people per team would be enough, Xiao Shikan said. Who's controlling the aggro? What about healing? Tang Hao asked. We'll specially designate people to control the aggro and not count that in the damage output. Each side will be responsible for their own healing, and if they cause an OT, then they're disqualified. Chu Yongshu efficiently laid out the details of her plan. If we do that, then I think sending 3 people per side would be enough. If there are more, then there'd be too much conflict. We'd get in each other's way, Yu Wenzhou said. If each side sent 5 people, then that'd be a large 25-person team attacking the boss. If the team was composed of all long-ranged classes, then it'd be a little better, but if there were more close-ranged classes, then that'd require careful coordination of position. But this was supposed to be a competition. There was no way that someone else would willingly give up their position for you, and so there'd definitely be a lot of clashing. Even if everyone was on the same team and couldn't damage each other, there could still be plenty of intentional interference with other players' attacks. Exactly. Competition keeps things interesting, Chu Yongshu said. Yu Wenzhou felt a shiver. This woman, she didn't have some deeper plan, did she? At the same time, he saw Xiao Shikan's mechanic glance toward his warlock. These are in-game characters, we don't need to meet each other's eyes, do we? But it seems like you also have reservations about Chu Yongshu's plan? Yu Wenzhou quietly thought to himself, but he truly couldn't find any reason to oppose her plan. At least, unlike his proposal of 1v1, the plan didn't obviously favor one side over another. Then let's hurry up and begin. From Wind Howl, players had already jumped forward. Just by looking at their classes, it was clear that they were all members of Wind Howl's professional team. Once he saw the classes of those characters, Yu Wenzhou suddenly realized what game Chu Yongshu was playing. Team Misty Rain had many long-ranged attackers. Even if long-ranged attacks could also be blocked, they were still much better off than the close-ranged classes vying for positions near the boss. This was what she had been counting on. Then what should Blue Brook do? For this battle, they couldn't just rely on the skill of the pro players, they also had to consider which classes would complement each other the best in this situation. Truly a competition of tactics. This was shaping up to be quite interesting. Yu Wenzhou thought and eventually decided on a suitable team. They didn't all have to be pro players. Here, the class composition mattered more. But just as he was about to call out names, he heard someone in the group shout, "What's that?" Where? Above. Yu Wenzhou raised his camera and saw the shadow of a character falling from the mountain's cliffside. This is, Yu Wenzhou startled, but there were already others with sharper eyes than his, who could see the ID on top of that shadow's head. Lord Grimm. An infamous name in their circles, Yi Shu's unspecialized Lord Grimm. Free falling at an acceleration at 9.8 meters per second, Lord Grimm seemed like he was about to crash into the mountain stream, but no one believed that this guy would just slip and fall to his death. At this moment, 3 shots of gunfire sounded. Lord Grimm pulled out his myriad manifestation umbrella, sending an anti-tank missile attack toward Shadow Commander San. The 3 shots fired one after another, 3 shots worth of recoil that slowed Lord Grimm's body. And then, the myriad manifestation umbrella opened, and with the mechanic skill rotor wing, Lord Grimm flew back up into the sky. Not good. Yu Wenzhou already realized what was going on. Quick, pull the aggro, Yu Wenzhou hurriedly shouted. The others now understood what this was all about. The long-ranged classes launched their attacks, while the knights immediately came to stabilize the aggro. But it was too late. In order not to disturb the boss, the various teams had maintained a considerable distance between themselves and Shadow Commander San. But now Lord Grimm suddenly fell from the sky and opened fire. The boss's reaction was of course instantaneous, especially since this was a level 75 Nightwalker boss. Assassins, thieves, ninjas, they were all agile and lightweight classes. The players couldn't scale the cliffs to the left and right of the mountain stream, but this wasn't an obstacle for this level 75 boss. With one stride, Shadow Commander San already leapt onto the cliffside, bounding and pedaling upward, instantly leaving behind all the long-ranged attacks of the players. Those clumsy knights wanted to mock them, but there was no way for them to keep up with San's speed. But would the boss be pulled away just like that? Incredulous, everyone looked up at the mid-air Lord Grimm. To fly completely above the top of the cliffs, that simply wasn't possible for a player, was it? Whether an assassin's air jump, or a mechanic's rotor wing, or a witch's broom mastery, or a summoner's small flying dragon summon, or so on, the skills of these classes could help a player achieve heights that other classes wouldn't be able to, but they wouldn't allow a player to fly clear over these cliffs, would they? It was true, these classes couldn't accomplish it. But Yishu's Lord Grimm was an unspecialized. If he used these skills in combination, this height. Even though most of these skills weren't sub-level 20 skills, it was no secret that the Myriad Manifestation Umbrella could change forms to allow the usage of higher-level skills. As expected, after the rotor wing, Lord Grimm jumped up again in mid-air, a movement that could only be accomplished with the usage of the skill air jump. And then there was another shot, an aerial fire that sent his character flying higher. Lord Grimm waved his hand, and that Myriad Manifestation Umbrella was in some unknown form and was stuck into the mountain. Lord Grimm twisted his body, landing on and jumping off the weapon. With a tug, he pulled the Myriad Manifestation Umbrella back out of the cliffside. Fuck. This umbrella had ninjutsu abilities too? Everyone could only look on with dazed expressions. Chapter 1092. 100 Tricks. When ninjas used ninjutsus, they could climb rocks unlike other classes. Thus, in theory, while other classes couldn't jump onto the cliff, ninjas could use their ninjutsus to climb on. The other classes could only sit there and watch, while the ninjas from the various guilds rushed out, brandishing their ninjutsus in preparation to scale the cliff. But using a ninjutsu required technique. Although normal players could perform a few tricks, knowing a few tricks wasn't going to be enough to chase a target. What was needed was speed and efficiency. As a result, everyone watched as the ninjas rushed forward aggressively, climbed for a bit, and then dropped down like dumplings one by one. The number of players who could stay on the cliff could be counted on one hand. However, among the ninjas who could remain on the cliff, there were a few that stood out, especially the fastest one. His movements flowed smooth as water. He was the number one ninja in Glory, Team Misty Rain's Li Hua, who used the character Dark Forest. From Li Hua's ninja, everyone could see hope. Everyone was filled with expectations as they raised their heads high, hoping Li Hua could accomplish something. But soon afterwards, a cold bucket of water splashed on them, extinguishing what little hope they had left. Someone had attacked down from above the cliff. A laser rifle shot over. Even though Li Hua reacted quickly and dodged it, that was just the first test. All sorts of long-ranged attacks rained down the cliff as if they were all trying to outdo each other. His guild's pro players closed their eyes, unable to keep looking. In this situation, Li Hua being able to smoothly scale the walls was quite good, but wanting him to pursue an attack. Intercept them? Forget about it. Yes, forget about it. After dodging a few waves of attacks, Li Hua let out a sigh and chose to give up and return to the mountain stream along with the few other ninjas, who were still hanging on. Thanks. In the global chat, Lord Grimm said a single word. Despicable. Shameless. B*****. Ruthless. Next time, you'll see. After Lord Grimm said thanks, replies came one after the other. The reactions and hand speed of the pro players were worthy of their reputation. The conversation in the global chat caused a commotion for the players. Everyone knew who Lord Grimm was, but who were the guys replying back? No one had heard of them, yet they dared to challenge Lord Grimm? Did these idiots not know who Lord Grimm was? F***ck, where'd so many idiots come from? Someone felt indignant at the injustice and made a remark. Yeah. Do you guys not know who Lord Grimm is? If they knew, they'd probably shit their pants. Haha, stupid noobs. They don't even know who Lord Grimm is. Go back to school. Trash talk came one after the other. The normal players might not be able to compare to pro players in fighting, but there was no lack of talented trash talkers. In an instant, words filled the screen. Everyone in the pro teams didn't know whether to laugh or cry and couldn't help but be at a loss for words. You guys don't even know the situation and you're bombing the screen. Who doesn't know that Lord Grimm is Yi Chu? You guys need to get your facts straight first. Don't you know how many people you've hurt with that screen bomb? It's best if you don't know. If you guys knew, you'd probably be crying tears. For the pro players, there was only Huang Shaoxin who wouldn't be outdone by the normal players in trash talking. Huang Shaoxin's trash talking might not be too sharp and mean, but just the length alone would let him win if you went back and forth with him. But this wasn't the glory competition stage. This was the heavenly domain. Huang Shaoxin wasn't up against 5 people. He was up against the millions playing the game. As soon as the players saw that someone was actually returning fire, they weren't going to let this rest. For a moment, the global chat had turned into a war. All sorts of players were talking trash about Huang Shaoxin's blade master. Huang Shaoxin's win condition was by length, but up against the torrent of players, he was defeated in the end. It was a miserable defeat too. Apart from being one against many, the global chat had another big limitation for Huang Shaoxin: talking had a cooldown. They're pissing me off. Because of the cooldown, he could only watch as people talk trash about him. For Huang Shaoxin, there was nothing more hellish than this. You guys are all talk. 1v1 me. Does anyone dare to? Let's take this to the arena. Fighting 100 of you pieces of wood wouldn't be a problem. When Huang Shaoxin realized that trash talking in the global chat was unwise, he tried to shift it to PvP. How could the players retreat? People immediately replied. Some even ran over to create a room for Huang Shaoxin to hurry up and bow down to them. That's enough. Do you plan on making next week's headlines? Seeing that Huang Shaoxin was actually intent on going to the arena and have a bloody battle with these players, Yu Wenzhou finally spoke up. In the end, Huang Shaoxin didn't go to the arena. The players who had opened up rooms, waiting for him, waited and waited, but didn't see him. How could there not scorching remarks fired at him? Fortunately, everyone in Team Blue Rain, including Huang Shaoxin, had already logged off. Shadow Commander San was taken away by Happy just like this. If the guilds wanted to chase, they would have to go all the way around the cliff. There clearly wasn't enough time, so their only choice was to give up. Dragon Swordsman, then Shadow Commander San. Blue Rain and Thunderclap had been thoroughly beaten by Happy 2 times in a row. The first time, their loss was fine. Yi Shu had shown that he was more familiar and experienced at large-scale in-game battles than them. But the second time, everyone had clearly gotten there first, but Yi Shu seemed to have descended from the heavens, relying on his shameless unspecialized class to steal the boss. That made them furious. Blue Rain, Thunderclap, and the pro players from other teams gave an announcement to their teams: when hunting for wild bosses, the first task is to be on guard against Yi Shu. The danger from this guy was even scarier than the other guilds combined. It was as if nothing could be done about it. Today's carelessness definitely couldn't happen again. Soon afterwards, an opportunity to test the guilds had come. Both sides once again met. It was Grey Corner's wild boss, the brawler killer Dinglong. From this boss's name, it sounded like he was a fighter class, but in reality, he was a gunner class. This time, there were a lot of guilds that got the news. Samsara and Tyranny. Their guilds unexpectedly didn't get the news for the previous 2 boss fights. But they weren't going to miss it this time. There was also Blue Rain and Thunderclap. After the 2 sides met, they remained silent for a long time. For this week's level 75 wild bosses, these 2 had done the best in terms of gathering intelligence. 3 wild bosses had spawned so far and they hadn't missed any of them. But so what? Despite not missing any of the spawns, the boss didn't go to them in the end. They had busied about for nothing. This was already the 3rd time, and they didn't want to go back empty-handed again. However, the confrontation this time was going to be more intense than before. Apart from them, there was 100 Blossoms, Misty Rain, and Void. None of those were cheerleaders. Fighting for wild bosses was like struggling for the championship title. Each side had a magnificent army with thousands of players, but only one side would win. At the Grey Market, the brawler killer Dinglong had spawned. Since this was a street market, it was going to be a street battle. Even though the guilds hadn't acted yet, they had already started sending out people in secret. There were many high points on the streets. For long-ranged classes, getting the high ground was extremely important for displaying their potential. Not long afterwards, the surrounding rooftops, pavilions, anywhere that was higher than the ground, had someone stationed there. The various guilds were all mixed together, looking at one another. No one said a word. They paid attention to the boss's situation, while keeping an eye on the other opposing guilds. As a result, in order to protect their long-range DPSers, melee classes began to climb up to the high points to protect their players. The grey market was unreasonably rowdy. Oh, why are there so many people this time? There was no limit to the rowdiness. The guilds were on guard, pondering over how they should fight this battle. At this moment, the evil that needed to be defended against had finally appeared. They hadn't found his character yet, but they could hear his voice. Happy had come. This news was like the news of an important person's death. The news was being spread everywhere. But when they tried looking for Happy, they were all in a daze. It wasn't Happy. Heavenly Justice, Radiant, Parade, Conquering Clouds, this group. The guilds weren't strangers to them. In reality, for a long time, Happy hadn't been fighting alone. They would always be bunched together with these guilds, allying together to compete with the big guilds for the bosses. The previous 2 times, Happy had operated alone. Now, these 4 guilds had come together. Happy had already grown to such a level. Did they still need this alliance? These guilds alone couldn't compare with the powerhouses, but together, their strength was evident. The pro players from the various guilds were almost about to collapse. This Yi Shu. When there weren't too many people, he would play tactics with you. When the terrain wasn't easy to fight in, he would play his class against you. This time, there were numerous guilds participating. The competition was intense, so now he was playing the numbers game. No matter what the scenario, he had something prepared for you. The powerhouses wouldn't be lacking in numbers either, but those responsible for undertaking an important task like fighting for wild bosses couldn't be ordinary fans. The elite players needed to be organized and disciplined. They had to guarantee that they would be ready to form a group at any moment. The guilds had to ensure that there were always 2 or 3 groups ready. Normal players might occasionally have some time to spare, and would participate and have some fun, but if you truly wanted to be like these elite players and be ready on call tens of times a week, how many people could endure it? Normal players played the game for fun. Elite players played the game as if it were work. As a result, even though powerhouses had many players, for fighting wild bosses, which needed to be done tens of times a week, it wasn't possible to have their entire guild come and fight. The number advantage that Yi Shu and his allied guilds had was truly troublesome. It wasn't easy to gather more elite helpers to face this type of alliance. For this alliance, if they saw that the situation wasn't looking good, they could just leave. But the guild's elite troops were an official establishment. They couldn't just kick people out. That would damage their image. Chapter 1093. Diversion. If you counted the 5-guild alliance, the wild boss of the Grey Corner, Brawler King Dinglong, had attracted 12 guilds. This was discounting those who might have gotten the message and were on their way. With 12 guilds, there would be at least 1 elite team from each guild, making it a total of over 1,000 characters clustered in this corner of the Grey Corner black market. There were quite a lot of people, but since it was a market, the terrain was full of stereoscopic buildings. The characters were scattered inside the buildings, outside the buildings, some on higher levels and some on lower ones. Even so, the place was still filled with characters. No space was left for the 5-guild alliance that had arrived a little late. And what aggro they had! As soon as they arrived, almost all the characters there had turned to look at them, prepared to fight. What's this? Did you all form an alliance or something? Yi Shu asked loudly. It would have been better had he not asked, but now that he had, everyone was going with it. That's right, we're getting rid of you first. It wasn't clear who exactly replied, but if they could represent the group to speak up, then they would have to be someone whose opinion was respected in the group. TCH, do you even know where I am? Yi Shu mocked. Looking around, the crowd realized that they really didn't know. Although pro players were skilled and had good audition skills, everyone was standing in clusters right now. While they could figure out the general area where Yi Shu's voice was coming from, they couldn't find Yi Shu's exact location. Yi Shu wasn't like them, who used their main class on their alts. This guy was an unspecialized now, the combination of all 24 classes. This made his alt account situation rather complicated, too. Who cares where you are? If anyone dares come any further, we'll kill them all, another unknown person spoke up with a threat this time. However, considering how things were looking right now, it didn't seem like an empty threat. They were very united even if it was forced. Alright then, we won't go any further. We'll just stand and watch. You all go ahead, Yi Shu said. Over 1,000 people simultaneously sent a sweat emoji, and the speech bubbles that popped up covered a huge area at once. It was an impressive sight, to say the least. Old Yi, you can't just do that, someone jumped out of the crowd to speak. Everyone looked over. It was a Spitfire from Tyranny, fiddling with the automatic handgun in his hand. Yo, it's you. How have you been? Good, Yi Shu asked. I'm very well, thank you, Zhang Jiali said. Did you cry? Fuck off, Zhang Jiali erupted. I told you ages ago. Tyranny isn't good enough. If you want to win the championships, you should have come to Happy, Yi Shu said. Boos immediately rose from the crowd. Even though this was God Yi Shu, who had the most championship titles under his belt, everyone felt that this sort of boast was just crazy. Who are you calling not good enough? A striker walked out of Tyranny's formation. After talking so much, Yi Shu's character had been exposed. This time, he was using a launcher. Old Han came too? How lively. I like it. I feel like we pro players should come in game more often when we're free to spar together, improve together, advance together, Yi Shu said in a serious tone. Stop spewing bullshit and disappear already. Or do you want us to send you off? A blade master from Bluebrook also came out. Just from the speed at which he talked, it was doubtlessly Huang Shaoshan. Zhang Jiali, Han Wenqing, Huang Shaoshan. The three surrounded Yi Shu ready to attack. This face-off alone was enough to have many people gasping. This was a face-off that would only ever be seen in All-Stars. Not only that, the show at All-Stars wasn't as intense or serious as the competition for bosses. What are you doing? Trying to bully me with numbers? Yi Shu had his character back away as the elite teams of the 5 guilds behind him stepped forward threateningly. Either way, don't even think of causing trouble this time. Thunderclap's Xiao Shiken had come over as well. Seeing that the situation wasn't bad, what with everyone so aggressively against Yi Shu's presence, he didn't want to waste the chance to cooperate and kick Yi Shu out of the competition. I'm not causing trouble. Can't I even take a walk here now? What do you want? Are you big guilds clearing the place, having your pro players bully others? Yi Shu yelled. Hearing this, the crowd's fuse was blown. This guy was just being shameless. Why are we talking with this guy? Just kill him, someone yelled. Who dare speak to me like that? Yi Shu yelled back. With so many people and so many voices, no one could immediately tell who it was that spoke, but no one cared either. However, with 5 guild elite teams standing behind him, Han Wenqing and the others didn't dare charge over. Otherwise, that guy would definitely order the 500 people behind him to drown them in people. Hoping that he would come out and 1v3 them was a naive thought. As a result, not only was the attention of pro players turned over this way, the elite teams were as well. Everyone began to advance as one. This time, it wasn't just Yi Shu's character but all of the 5 guilds behind him who began to retreat. What are you doing? You want to fight, huh? You aren't even going after the boss and you want to PK? That's unfair, Yi Shu said. If you don't want to fight, then leave. We won't let you have this boss. You think we're so easy to scare, Yi Shu called out. If you continue, it won't be good for anyone. Why don't you just take your people and leave, Yu Wenzhou said from Blue Rain's side. Why do we have to go and not you? Yi Shu asked. Because you have no chance of winning, Yu Wenzhou continued to chat with Yi Shu patiently. Hey, we might not have a chance of winning in a fight, but are we here to fight? Yi Shu suddenly laughed. This reply had Yu Wenzhou lost for words. Then, he looked around, only to see that all the players from the guilds were facing off against the 5 guild alliance aggressively, cracking their fists and ready to fight at any time. Boss, Yu Wenzhou, who was usually very composed, called out suddenly, his tone a little pained. At the same time, someone at their rear yelled out, boss, as well. That's right, boss. Everyone's aggro had turned to Yi Shu and everyone had forgotten that they were here to fight for a wild boss and not for Yi Shu. Thus, when everyone's attention was elsewhere, a small team appeared at the other end of the corner. They had no guild tags above their heads, like a normal passing team of players. They suddenly attacked, immediately pulling Brawler King away. Was this a coincidence? Of course not. Yu Wenzhou was 100% sure that this was one of Yi Shu's schemes. This was his plan. He had managed to completely divert their attention. All the teams hurried to respond, but that small team was definitely prepared and had planned for this. They knew exactly where to drag the boss, darting in and out of the streets of this black market smoothly. It was the elite teams of the guild that were having a lot of trouble. Operating as a whole in places like this made them clumsy. It was a good thing that every guild had pro players. They didn't have the time to take care of their entire team and all rushed out individually, using their own judgment and methods to search for the boss. Huang Shaoshan, who had been at the front lines of the face-off against Yi Shu, had managed to get his blade master to the front lines of their hunt for the wild boss in the blink of an eye. With Yu Wenzhou's calm and clear analysis and arrangements, he quickly caught up. "Where do you think you're going?" Huang Shaoshan yelled, his blade master jumping down from a roof nearby and using sword draw mid-air. A flash of sword energy gathered on his blade and flew out. The attack seemed about to knock down a bunch of people, but then someone in the team suddenly charged out, their spear swinging up and dispersing the light. The sword draw had been parried. Having to parry when only able to see the flash of light caused by the sword energy from the attack and not the blade itself was something you could do if you relied on mechanics alone. Huang Shaoshan hadn't expected that his strike would be unsuccessful. Out of Happy's members, only Yi Shu would be able to this. So who was this person? Huang Shaoshan had no time to wonder. The battle mage struck out with his spear once again and Huang Shaoshan hurriedly pulled back his sword to guard in mid-air. He had wanted to use this strike to glide through the air and continue to chase the boss, but he hadn't expected that the other would realize his intentions and switch from a stab to a upwards flick. Huang Shaoshan's blade master wasn't knocked to one side by this attack and was instead flicked upwards. "Who are you?" Huang Shaoshan was shocked. The battle mage's mechanics weren't what was shocking, but rather his understanding of his intentions and judgments. This definitely wasn't something that Happy's rookies could do. "Who do you think?" the other retorted. "Holy crap, how did you get here? Weren't you a launcher? How did you become a battle mage?" Huang Shaoshan yelled in surprise. "I said, didn't I? I have 8 computers open, logged into 8 alts. Didn't you believe me?" Yi Shu said, his spear once again striking towards Huang Shaoshan's blade master, but this time, he directly used an ultimate, Furious Dragon Strikes the Heart. Huang Shaoshan's guard skill was on cooldown, so he couldn't block the attack. Instead, he used a Rising Dragon Slash to pull his character higher in the air and dodge the attack. Then he saw that Yi Shu's battle mage had long since cancelled the skill and left him in the air to run back to his team. "Fuck, don't you dare run," Huang Shaoshan hollered. "Who's running?" Yi Shu replied. Huang Shaoshan looked over again. Yi Shu hadn't run. It was just that his battle mage had darted over by a body unit and blocked off Huang Shaoshan's path beforehand. He had never planned to leave with his team, but stay and stall Huang Shaoshan. Fuck, Huang Shaoshan immediately understood his intentions. By the time he was finished with Yi Shu, who knew where the boss would be? "Why are you such a slippery bastard?" Huang Shaoshan yelled. "Ha ha ha, you should learn from me." Yi Shu didn't mind chatting with Huang Shaoshan some more. However, would a thing like speaking interfere with Huang Shaoshan's combat ability? Of course not. He kept chattering on and on even as he charged forwards. His intention wasn't to fight Yi Shu to the death, but to charge past him. But Lu Hanwen's blade master arrived, Zheng Zan's Spitfire arrived, and Yu Wenzhou's Warlock also arrived. Huang Shaoshan had worked hard to find the boss, so obviously he'd only share his intel with his own people and not the other guilds. The ones who had gotten his memo and came were all Blue Rain's people. Yet when they arrived, they found Huang Shaoshan still here facing off against Yi Shu. Where was the boss? It had left this street ages ago. It went that way. "Don't worry about me, you just hurry and chase after it," Huang Shaoshan called out. "You think I'm not here or something? Senior, do you want to block us 4 on your own?" Lu Hanwen asked in shock. "Don't listen to his bullshit. Hurry and give chase, little guy," Huang Shaoshan yelled. "I'm really worried for your IQ. You think you're the only one who knows how to call reinforcements?" As his words fell, Blue Rain's 4 pros were instantly surrounded. Chapter 1094. There's no harm in cooperating. Yu Wenzhou looked left and right. They were surrounded by tens of players. With this sort of encirclement, even if they were able to break away through their superior skill, they wouldn't be able to pursue the boss anymore. Yu Wenzhou sighed. This encirclement wasn't really a trap, but rather an opening from them. He had analyzed which direction the boss could have been pulled away and then assigned people to chase after the boss. Sure enough, Huang Shaoshan found the boss. In this type of situation, they obviously wouldn't be sharing this info with the other guilds. Not only would they not be sharing the info, they had to protect this news from leaking. Thus, Yu Wenzhou didn't immediately dispatch Blue Brook Guild elite troops to throw themselves at the boss. Such an obvious movement would definitely attract the attention of others. Yu Wenzhou didn't want to block Yi Shu off from the boss, while also bringing along a bunch of competitors. As a result, Yu Wenzhou instructed his elite troops to continue spreading out as if they were still searching for their target in an attempt to mislead the other guilds. In the meantime, their pro players would get together and go over. A small-scale movement naturally wouldn't be seen through by others. Their movements indeed didn't arouse any of the other guilds' suspicions, but Yi Shu had dispatched people to surround them, making them appear weak and outnumbered. Fighting isn't beneficial to either side. You guys should leave, Yi Shu said. Yu Wenzhou laughed bitterly. Wasn't this what he had said to Yi Shu a few minutes ago? This guy was quick to return fire. Retreat, Yu Wenzhou immediately ordered. What? Huang Shaoshan was shocked. Wasting time like this is pointless. It's better to retreat, Yu Wenzhou said. Lu Hanwen and Zheng Zan had started retreating. Even though Huang Shaoshan was unwilling, he respected his captain's authority. After spouting a bunch of trash talk at Yi Shu, he retreated helplessly. A man who recognizes the facts of a situation is a true hero, Yi Shu sighed. You flatter me, Yu Wenzhou said. If there's ever an opportunity, there's no harm in cooperating together, Yi Shu said. There will be one, Yu Wenzhou smiled. Afterwards, some more nonsense was said. Yi Shu was naturally stalling to give time for his players to kill the boss. As for Yu Wenzhou, he had already given up. After personally participating in numerous wild boss battles, he now thoroughly recognized just how complicated these battles were. Several guilds, sometimes more than 10, fought against each other in a chaotic war. There was no way to predict anything. Yu Wenzhou had carefully studied Blue Brook Guild's reports. He clearly saw that no matter which guild it was, their results were very inconsistent, following no patterns. It was possible that one week, one guild would succeed several times, while the next week, the guild failed to get anything. Whether it was Blue Brook Guild or Herb Garden or any other powerhouse, it was the same. Because of how chaotic the wars were, all sorts of impossible to predict events decided the outcome each time. There was no absolute logic in any of these. However, when Yi Shu led happy, the outcome was more consistent. Compared to the constant ups and downs of the other guilds, their relatively flat and smooth line was astonishing. Without a doubt, Yi Shu was able to minimize the chaos happening in these battles, which meant that Yi Shu's way of conducting battles was very valuable as a reference. From what Yu Wenzhou saw, Yi Shu's tactical skill was certainly one aspect, but more importantly, he was able to accurately grasp the conflicts and balance between the guilds during these boss battles, allowing him to direct the overall direction of the battle. His tactical arrangements didn't stop at just purely battle aspects such as movements, focusing targets, switching targets. Doing this wasn't easy. Yu Wenzhou could see the painstaking amount of work that Yi Shu put into this. It seemed even more difficult than them playing in competitive matches. There was only one match a week, but there were tens of wild boss battles every week. Just how much effort did it take him to do all this homework? Therefore, when Yi Shu suggested that they cooperate when an opportunity arose, Yu Wenzhou didn't hesitate to agree. He didn't mind Yi Shu utilizing their guild's resources because in his eyes, Yi Shu was a huge resource too. Yu Wenzhou replied to Yi Shu and then talked about it with Changing Spring. After all, this was an in-game matter. Technically speaking, the team captain had no such authority in this area. However, pro players had high statuses, especially the captain. Even though they didn't officially have any authority, their words held a lot of weight in anything related to glory. A more assertive captain would practically be giving orders to the guild leader. Yu Wenzhou was rather polite. When he spoke to Changing Spring, it was more of a suggestion. After Changing Spring heard Yu Wenzhou's suggestion, he was stunned. Cooperation. It wasn't like he didn't know how to do that. It was just that the competitions between the guilds, especially the ones between the top guilds like Blue Brook Guild, had a "wolves are here" feeling. No one trusted each other's words. Whenever they cooperated, they would always be on guard for any backstabbing. Once or twice was fine, but if it was frequent, they wouldn't be able to endure this type of provocation. In the end, they might as well just do things alone. Nothing could be done about it. The competition between the guilds could be considered another battlefield for the teams aiming to be the champions. For them, injuring others was beneficial for themselves. As a result, if they weren't able to get the boss, they didn't mind making things more difficult for their enemies. It wasn't just about strengthening themselves. It was also about finding a way to stop their enemies from growing stronger. In this type of environment, it was hard to have any good relationships with other guilds. As a result, when Changing Spring heard about Yu Wenzhou's suggestion for a cooperation, he was startled at first. He really wanted to say that cooperating didn't fit this sort of environment. Don't say look at how Happy allied with 4 other guilds, so we should do the same. The guilds that Happy had allied together with were all bottom-tier cheerleader guilds. The relationship between those guilds weren't as tense. They were never really competitors in these boss battles anyways. It was like giving medicine to a dead horse. They might as well just ally together. Blue Brook Guild wasn't in the same position as them though. Changing Spring was still pondering over how to explain this to Yu Wenzhou, but then Yu Wenzhou told him who he was planning on cooperating with, Yi Shu. Lord Grimm. Changing Spring was more used to calling people by their in-game names. Yu Wenzhou actually wanted to cooperate with that guy. Changing Spring could feel his head going numb. This was the first phrase that floated into Changing Spring's mind. That guy was too treacherous. If they cooperated with him, they would be nibbled down to the very bone. Yi Shu. Isn't this a bit hard? Changing Spring heard who their collaborator would be. He couldn't even manage to think about how he should word things and immediately expressed his thoughts. What do you mean? Yu Wenzhou asked. According to our experiences interacting with him, he isn't very trustworthy. Changing Spring's head shook like a rattle drum. Really? His reputation is that poor? Yu Wenzhou laughed. More like there isn't anything good to say about it. Changing Spring grit his teeth. As one of his competitors, of course you wouldn't feel anything good from him. Have you ever seriously cooperated with him before? Yu Wenzhou said. Changing Spring hesitated. When Yi Shu's Lord Grimm entered the heavenly domain, they were already huge enemies. They had been trying to stop him the entire time. Cooperate? Changing Spring felt his face turn red. In the beginning, he didn't know that this person was God Yi Chu. Most of their thinking had been on how to recruit him. Recalling how they had actually been thinking about recruiting this god to get him to do labor for the guild, Changing Spring suddenly felt like he had been quite bold too. Blue Bridge, when you were in the 10th server, you interacted with him a lot. What are your thoughts? Changing Spring asked Blue River. If it's from a cooperative perspective, I feel like he's reliable. Blue River couldn't help but think of the 10th server and how the god had been hired by them to do work for the guild. The prices that Yi Shu gave them made Blue River feel like Yi Shu was a very understanding person. He wasn't trying to cheat them and it was best not to try cheat him either. Under these conditions, the relationships between the two of them had been quite a happy one. How did they end up trying to kill each other? Blue River carefully recalled. It seemed to be when that guy stopped being up for hire and started doing his own work. Then, that guy monopolized all sorts of records, so the Pioneering Guild stopped working with him and wanted to show him their might. Thinking about this, Blue River realized that the top guilds had tried to suppress a competitor, except it turned out that their competitor was a god. In the end, they were like soldiers abandoning their armor as the furious dragon attacked them. In this story, what they had viewed as the evil sect wasn't really an evil sect. Weren't they the bunch of bastards trying to bully the weak? Thinking of this, Blue River suddenly wanted to cry. From his understanding, evil sects always had the advantage at first, but then they would always be destroyed by the righteous sects. When had there ever been a lowly evil sect covered in dirt? That evil sect would be too weak, no? Then, are we going to be joining their 5-guild alliance? Changing Spring said in a daze. That's not necessary. When the battle is in our grasp, we should have full rights to the boss. When the situation is hazier, considering a cooperation with them might give us a chance to turn things around. If you take a look at Happy, that's pretty much what they're doing. If they can take the boss alone, they won't join up with the other guilds and share their spoils, Yu Wenzhou said. I understand, Changing Spring nodded his head. Because Yu Wenzhou had decided to give up, Blue Brook Guild retreated from Grey Corner's black market. The other guilds were still looking around. In the end, Xiao Shiken was able to find traces of the boss, but they were too late. The boss was already about to collapse. So you actually found us. Why don't you take a look at the time though? Yi Shu welcomed Xiao Shiken, but he didn't put up his guard. At this point, any guild with a bit of perceptiveness would have left already. Xiao Shiken was an understanding person, yet he still insisted on searching for them. Yi Shu reckoned that he had other motives. So you ran here, Xiao Shiken sighed. What? Are you studying my tactics? Yi Shu said. Haha, Xiao Shiken laughed, but didn't answer back. If there's ever an opportunity, there's no harm in cooperating together, Yi Shu said. That sounds good, Xiao Shiken said and sent a friend request. No need to add me as a friend. If anything comes up, just message me on QQ. This bro's got tens of alternates, how would you know which alt I'm using? Yi Shu didn't hesitate to reject it. Chapter 1095. Immortals Fighting. Another announcement for Happy killing the level 75 wild boss brawler killer Dinglong was issued. Even though the vast majority of players had no way of participating in wild boss battles, that didn't mean they didn't care, especially the veterans. They were fully aware that wild boss battles directly affected a team's strength. It could be considered as the second battlefield for pros outside the league. And this week, of the level 75 bosses, Happy had already taken down 3 of them. Such might made the other guilds feel gloomy, while shocking the rest of the players. But in reality, this time's brawler killer Dinglong didn't solely belong to Happy. Their guild name was the one that appeared on TV, but Heavenly Justice, Parade, Radiant, and Conquering Clouds had participated too. Even though those 4 guilds had been a part of the backdrop, having a vast number of troops had been extremely crucial. The amount of work that they put in might not be much, but their contributions were essential. Yi Shu's generous treatment towards his alliance buddies made the 4 alliance guild leaders feel very embarrassed. They stubbornly insisted that he take a greater share, while they split the rest evenly amongst themselves. After splitting up the spoils, the 4 guilds promptly expressed their wishes. The representative for these 4 guilds was Heavenly Justice's guild leader, Team Heavenly Swords team captain, and Club Heavenly Swords boss, Lu Guaning. The Holy Trinity was too tyrannical. In the alliance, only Lu Guaning possessed such status. God, why didn't you call us for the last 2 bosses? Don't forget about us, Lu Guaning said. Yeah, those 3 guild leaders immediately added in their voices. Happy had enjoyed the last 2 wild bosses alone, putting these 4 guilds into a state of panic. As Happy advanced through the Challenger League to beating Excellent Era to win the finals, their popularity had risen to new heights. In the end, they were also able to establish quite a powerful guild. Moreover, new guilds that developed along with the team were the most passionate and energetic. It was easy for guild members to disregard their own gains and losses, putting their efforts into strengthening the team. As a result, the 4 allied guilds felt like the importance of their alliance was dropping. In fact, Happy had already taken down 2 wild bosses on their own without their help. 5 guilds cooperating together meant splitting the boss's spoils into 5. And now, Happy had just taken down 2 wild bosses independently, which was equivalent to the 5 guild alliance taking down 10 bosses. This comparison was too daunting. Anyone would know which choice to take. Thus, if Happy truly had the ability and renounced their partnership to take flight alone, the other 4 guilds wouldn't blame Happy. If they were in Happy's position, they would also make the same choice. In the end, everyone was working together for their own benefit. Joining hands and prospering together didn't exist here because there could only ever be one champion. Happy taking down 2 wild bosses on their own worried the 4 guilds. Lu Guaning had been looking for an opportunity to communicate this with Yi Shu. Then, after another boss spawned, Yi Shu called over the alliance to gather. Once this boss was taken care of, the 4 guilds huddled up and discussed with each other. In the end, they directly raised this issue with Yi Shu, wanting to see what response Happy would give. Everyone had been working happily together for a long time. No one had been cheated. Suddenly, Happy went out alone without telling them. There were definitely unspoken criticism from them, but the problem was that they had never agreed that if a wild boss came, they must share it. The agreement was just that if the opportunity arose, everyone could work together, that's all. As a result, the four guilds had no grounds to criticize him, so Lu Guanning asked half-jokingly, hinting to Yi Shu what their thoughts were. How could Yi Shu not understand the meaning behind his words? He laughed, is there really a need for me to say it? You all understand. After all, no team ever helps another for the fun of it, no? Lu Guanning heard his response and wanted to cry. He was so direct. It was as if he were stating the obvious, and the four of them asking this question really made them seem foolish and naive. It went without saying. Everyone was fully aware. Not laying it bare could be considered as leaving them some face, but now that they had insisted on an answer, look how awkward the atmosphere is. Fortunately, Lu Guanning and the other guild leaders were familiar with Yi Shu. They immediately composed themselves and laughed, you're right. If an opportunity arises in the future, don't forget to call us. Of course, Yi Shu smiled. In fact, he had called them over to kill Brawler Killer Dinglong for this very reason. Lu Guanning had nothing else to say. The other three weren't that familiar with Yi Shu. They might have some other thoughts, but nothing would change because Yi Shu's words were spot on. In the end, they were still competitors. No team helped another for the fun of it. At least, that was definitely the case for them. Then, we'll see each other again if anything comes up. We'll be going first. The three guilds bade farewell. See you. Yi Shu sent off the other guilds. Happy also called it a day. In-game matters continued to be taken care of by Wu Chen and Chen Guo. Yi Shu and the others followed their usual routine and went on with their practice. For their current practice, apart from improving their individual skill and teamwork, they also began analyzing their opponents. This work used to be done by Yi Shu alone, but now he was having the entire team analyze. After all, he couldn't micromanage everything that happened on the battlefield. More often than not, the players needed to make their own decisions. Understanding their opponents was homework that no player could ignore. In the Challenger League, the vast majority of their opponents had nothing worth looking into, but it was different now. For the current Happy, these 19 teams were like towering mountains. There were too many things to study. What Happy lacked the most wasn't skilled players or materials or equipment, but time. Even so, they couldn't go too crazy. A healthy schedule was also necessary, especially after last season's finals. The issue of Tyranny's stamina issue had triggered a fervent discussion. Now, no one would ignore the effects of keeping a solid schedule. Happy needed large amounts of materials, but playing 24/7 to get every single boss was no longer something that the team would do. As a result, the fourth wild boss that spawned this week didn't fall into Happy's hands. Guild Happy had gotten the message and went to participate. Without Yi Shu watching over, their competitiveness instantly fell. This was also one reason why those four guilds in the alliance were gloomy, seeing Happy wanting to fly out alone. Everyone knew the value of having a skilled commander, let alone a top expert like Yi Shu. After a chaotic battle, the fourth wild boss this week, Grey Corner's Underground Dark Hand, a fighter, gunner, and Nightwalker specialized boss, was snatched by tyrannical ambition. No pro players participated in this scuffle. According to the participants in this fight, this time's boss competition gave them an almost serene feeling. This type of serenity was quite rare. Tomorrow, when the sun came out, the pro players would pour onto the battlefield. The pro players on vacation were more free. At least, they weren't required to practice during vacation. Practice was up to them to decide. Now that they had decided to go into the game and help the guild take wild bosses, why would the club object? During the day, various battles bloomed where the bosses spawned. At night, the biggest topic in the Glory forums came from an anonymous post: what type of summer is this? This summer, the number of pro players playing in the game had to be a record. In the early days, Glory was small. The number of pro players back then couldn't compare to the number of pro players today. In this post, the original poster listed all of the pro players that he had seen during this week's wild boss battles. From this, it could be seen that this poster was definitely an elite member of a top guild. An ordinary player wouldn't have had the chance to participate in so many of these battles. And from how the description in the post was practically incoherent, it was evident that this elite player was on the verge of collapse. Just a while before, these elite players were existences that everyone admired. Even though their roles were like jobs and they were under pressure that many players wouldn't understand, these elite players did it in exchange for glory that ordinary players would never be able to obtain. But everything had changed now. The pro players pouring in made them. Or at least, for this poster, it had resulted in a huge psychological blow to him. He didn't know what he could do or what he could achieve. He was the fodder when immortals fought. The post was pretty much just him crying and complaining the entire time. His choice to go anonymous seemed to be the last shred of clear-headedness in him. Even more pitiful for him, not only did this post not garner any sympathy, it brought laughter from all sorts of players. Seeing these elite players, who usually sat up high looking down on them, being stomped on by even more elite pro players was a form of pleasure to them. As for the pro players, how could they talk bad about them? The pro players were their idols. In the end, this post became a source of laughter in this scorching summer. It had no impact on the situation. The teams were using this summer to do everything they could to strengthen themselves. They weren't going to change just because of a single guild elite player's complaints. None of their plans changed. At this moment, the official Glory company made an announcement. Glory would be releasing a summer carnival event. The players instantly knew what this meant, plenty of rewards. And the pro teams also woke up. For pro teams, events were also great opportunities to obtain generous rewards. But as per usual, if all they did was participate, the rewards would just be ordinary. The truly high-end rewards came out of intense competition. It was similar to dungeon records and wild boss battles. These types of competitions had always been what the game was about, and every event embodied this style too. Carnival. What type of competition would it be? And this time, there were so many passionate pro players participating. Just how fierce would the competition be?